Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Grambeau Knives Russ EDC, which is a smaller version of the original Russ. I've got that one here. I'm going to talk about that. Thanks so much to Grambeau Knives for providing this prototype for review. I don't get to keep this. This will go back to Grambeau Knives. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. These are available for pre-order right now, and it's my understanding that they plan to ship these in late May of 2024. There's quite a few different configurations, including frag texturing. They've got kind of a wavy, almost like a hinderer texturing, and then they've got the plain or smooth. You can choose between a satin blade, a tumbled blade, or even a coated black blade. Same with the frames, actually. So quite a few options. I'll link it right down in the description. Be sure to check it out. Let's go ahead and measure this one so you guys have an idea of the size here. The overall length, sorry, I've got some debris on the table from the last review, which had a lot of debris. 7.5 inches here. Blade length, 3 1/4 on the dot. Cutting edge, 3 1/16. How about some size comparisons? I think the most important size comparison is up against the original Grambeau Russ. So you can see here it is smaller. The original Russ, which I absolutely love, and believe me, I've got a lot of good things to say about the EDC Russ. This guy's about 8 1/4, right? So this is a good bit down, but not so small that it feels tiny. And the other thing I want to point out here is that the profile, the ergonomic profile, is very open. So even if you've got hands like mine, you know, this might feel a little bit more natural, but this is still plenty comfortable, and you have plenty of room here. So if you missed out on the bigger one, you're thinking this one's going to be too small. Probably not, unless your hands are absolutely massive. I wear an XL glove, and I'm still plenty comfortable here with this guy. So anyways, let's go ahead and do some size comparisons with some other common knives. Any custom skills that you see in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5, it is definitely very comparable in overall size to the 8020.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Closer to the size of the Para 3 for sure, but way more cutting edge than both. And then finally, last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca. Also very comparable in overall size to the Hogue Deca. How's the action on this knife? Very, very good. Very, very comparable to the original Grambeau. It's just a little bit less, the original Russ. It's just, there's less blade. There's less weight in the blade, but it's very smooth, very controlled, very easy to do the reverse flick. It's very easy to disengage and just manipulate with one hand in general. The access to the lock bar is also very good. It's important to point out that this is actually a frame lock with a detachable overlay. We usually don't see that. We usually see the opposite. We see, either an exposed frame lock, or you see a liner lock, right, that's nested into the frame, or sometimes just attached to the frame and separate. This plate comes off. It's the same as the original full-size Russ. The plate comes off. This is a good example of the other texturing that's offered, by the way. But yeah, that's pretty cool. These are manufactured by Bestech Knives, by the way. That's who the OEM is, and I believe that's who the OEM was last time. They did a great job with this. No question about it. Bestech does some great stuff, and this is a great example of that. So yeah, action is phenomenal, and the thumb studs, the style of thumb studs are also, they're just really great. I have no nitpicks whatsoever with the action. Runs on bearings, by the way, cage bearings. This is all information you can pick up on his website as well. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is definitely, I would say, slightly thicker. It's contoured though, and that's noticeable, and that always does. If it's a little bit thicker, when it's contoured and the overall shape of the handle is catering to the human hand, right, and the edges are knocked down, then that adds for a little bit more comfort. So I don't really mind that it's slightly thicker than knives like the Para 3. Up against the PM2 and Para 3 in terms of length and height, we have a knife that's No longer than the Para 3 and nowhere near as tall as either. So really in the pocket, this is a fairly compact knife. What do we have for materials? We have titanium with titanium, and honestly some steel for the hardware. And then we have a hollow ground Magna Cut blade. What's the Rockwell hardness? His website says 61 to 63, which is just fine in my book. You can think whatever you want. I'm not here to discuss. As long as we're in the general range for Magna Cut, right, and there's good geometry here, which there definitely is, it's good to go. Let's go ahead and weigh it. My guess is that this comes in maybe slightly under 4 ounces. Yeah, okay, 3.81 ounces. That's about what I expected. Not perfect ratios, but it's under 4 ounces. I mean, once you get under 4 ounces, it doesn't necessarily matter as much as long as the balance is okay. I mean, the thing is going to feel exactly like what it looks like. A compact, fairly lightweight pocket knife, right? I would do a hardware check, but a lot of this, I mean, it's T8, right? But then you have hex, which is pretty common. Like if you want to take this apart, it's going to be pretty easy. If you have Torx, you probably have hex. And fortunately, we've got some larger sizes here. In fact, you know what? I think I went over this. I think I made this mistake when I reviewed it the first time. Hold on a second. Now, hold on now. I don't think these are actually hex. I think maybe they're... Oh, is it a T25? I think maybe it was I being dumb, or did they change it? Oh, is the old one... No, it'd be the same thing too. Hold on now, hold on. Yeah, newsflash. Sometimes I'm stupid. This is a T25. T25 for the pivot. Oh, is it in a T25 for this side too? Yeah, wow. Okay. T25. That's pretty cool. They obviously sort of screw together there. Yeah, so T25, and then we actually have a T8. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. Yeah, and then we have a T8 for this little plate right here, and then you have a hidden screw back here, which also looks like it's going to be a T8. So this really is going to be a pretty darn easy knife to take apart and put back together. I love the see-through hardware. I love the way that this all fits together. That's plenty substantial, plenty durable, minimal parts, and really large fasteners, which I love. I hate teeny tiny little T6 and smaller fasteners. I absolutely hate them. Don't tell me to get good tools. I've got good tools. I hate T6 and smaller for good reason. I have stripped more T6 fasteners and screwed up more T6 bits than any other size. And so I always prefer a deep, large fastener head. So that's great. I think that's awesome. I'm glad I checked. I would have just left it there at, they're hex. I prefer Torx to hex too, by the way. I'm sure most of you do. Anyways, we've weighed it. Oh, we need to check blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness, that to me looks like about 140. We're going to find out. We're coming in at, 135,000. So just about the middle of the road. Okay. So this is exactly what it, sounds like. It's just a smaller, I guess, more EDC friendly version of the Grambeau Russ. Now, I personally like the size of the Grambeau Russ, and you can obviously EDC it. I think, the whole idea here was just to make a smaller one for people who don't want to carry a knife that's the same size as the original Russ. And this is successful. I read on his website he wanted to have a slightly better blade to handle ratio along with some other things here, but the design has remained largely the same. It's just smaller. Edges are nicely chamfered down. The texturing is a nice, grippy but not aggressive texturing, right? The other texturing is probably going to feel very similar to this, which is honestly a little bit more grippy, but still not bad. There are smooth zones underneath the pocket clips, so you don't have to worry about that fraying up your pockets or anything. Truthfully, the best thing about this design is not only does it look kind of like, it's kind of like Les George meets Chris Reeve. That's kind of what it looks like to me. And then you've got a little Strider hardware in there. The design is so ergonomically open. I mean, it's just really comfortable. There's nothing that's locking you into a specific zone because this whole area, this nice large, this is a 2-finger area for most people, which is great. That's how it should be. And it's the same way on the big one, right? This makes sense. It's not a 1.5 finger or a 2.5 finger area. For most people, it's gonna be 2 fingers inside of this curved or carved out area right here, and then 2 fingers back here, and it's just really comfortable. There's a nice thumb ramp here, and this is reasonable enough texturing that you can get some good grip on here. The blade is definitely going to be, the best part. That's going to be the part that shines the most because it's just about the most utilitarian all-purpose blade shape that you could get, and it's hollow ground magnet cut that's been properly heat treated. This does get aggressively thin down here for sure. It's going to cut, it's going to slice, it's going to poke, right? It's going to do what you expect it to do. I like the tumbled finish. I think that looks best. I'm not the biggest fan always of the coated blades. A lot of times the coatings bring the Rockwell range down just a little bit. There was no mention of that on the site, but usually that's the case, so I don't know. But they all look good. They all look just fine. I like the tumbled finish, and I think the way that this tumbled finish looks is, truly spectacular. I also like that he kept everything off the blade except for, your blade might say Magna Cut. It won't say prototype. It might say Magna Cut, right? It might be numbered kind of like this. This was the production sample that I got of the Russ, which was M39-135. So it might say something like that. But on this side, you don't see anything. You just see Grambeau knives or just Grambeau on the pivot, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's great. The edges up here are knocked down. There's a nice swedge, right? Flat that runs out about maybe 70%, 65, 70% the length of the blade. Just very traditional drop point goodness. It looks a lot like the blade on the VECP V3 or like the Spartan Harzy, right? It's not to say it's a copy. That's just a time-tested, tried and true blade shape, right? We have just basically one large standoff barrel here, which is fine. That's really all it needs. You cannot touch the blade in between the frame. That's nice. You can absolutely use this as a lanyard hole, which I think is great. Using, you're kind of combining a bunch of different things. The fasteners holding the frame together, the standoff, and the lanyard hole are all one thing, which means they can be moved off to the side, allowing for prioritization of the thing that matters way more, and that's the pocket clip position. This is a nice position for it. Really just kind of a medium depth, not super deep, but definitely not shallow, right? Nice contoured, machined pocket clip with, a bill that's not sharp at the edge, and there's a little bit of a ramp underneath. I don't like as much that we have the water droplet shape underneath. I prefer that they sort of curve and come just a continuous ramp. It makes it a little less pinchy in and out of the pocket, but okay, it's not the worst thing in the entire world. In fact, honestly, I had a great carry experience with this. This one got carried a little longer. I think this one was in and out of the pocket for 2 weeks, rotating with a bunch of other stuff up by my nightstand. And truthfully, my overall carry experience with this was it was that of convenience. This just became, an extension of my hand. It was the tool that was in my pocket. It did exactly what I wanted it to do. It went in and out of the pocket with ease. It deployed with ease. It cut amazing. I just did light stuff. If you don't know, like how extensive is your testing, Metal Complex? It isn't. I'm a design reviewer. I just use my pocket knives like any other regular Joe would use them. I put them in my pocket. I get them out if I need to cut open a package or something simple, and then I put them away. But I judge based on how convenient this experience is. I don't like carrying things that weigh down or encumber my person. I don't like carrying things that I'm constantly aware of in my pocket. I just want to exist without being constantly reminded of the knife in my pocket until it comes time to use said knife in my pocket. So my regular Joe experience with this knife was very, very good. I very much enjoyed it. I didn't have, despite my preferences with the underside of the pocket clip, the water droplet shape didn't bother me too bad. So anyways, no need for an over travel because the plate is the over travel, but it does have a steel lock bar insert on a titanium frame lock, so that's cool. What's the convenience of that? While you're deploying it, you don't have to worry about how much pressure you're putting on this side because you're not putting pressure on the frame lock. You're putting pressure on the plate that covers it. And that puts no additional pressure on the lock itself, which means no additional pressure on the blade. So you're not sitting there flicking it over and over again, not able to deploy it because there's too much pressure while you're gripping it. You just deploy it. That's why I've come to prefer exposed frame locks less and less and less over time. They can be bothersome depending on the design, but this works just fine. Stop pin located in its traditional spot. No shouldering, but we don't need it. That's fine. Very smooth, very consistent. Also extremely solid lockout. No blade play up, down, left to right. No lock stick, no pivot lash. Very consistent in here, and a nice, I'm going to call that like medium. I mean, it's about the detent strength you would want for a reverse flick. And by the way, you can front flip this. It's okay. It's definitely better. This was a little rounded on the regular one, and this isn't quite the same thing. I think maybe if it stuck up just a little bit higher, but it's fine the way that it is. Truthfully, I would just ignore that was there and just reverse flick it or thumb flick it. Just fine, right? Exactly what you'd want it to do. Great centering, perfect. No detent lash. And I think the geometry on the engagement is plenty good. It looks super duper early, but if we look at the tang, yeah, the true story of total surface contact is right here, which is about 25 to 30%. And that's obviously plenty. What's the price tag? $337. Do I think that's fair? That's a little high. Everything's a little high right now. I was really hoping to see this thing come in at about $300. I do find these designs to be nicer than what we typically see. There is contouring here. There's some uniqueness in the hardware. We have a nice hollow ground, in this case, Magna Cut blade. I love the unique element of there being a plate that covers an actual frame lock. I think that's really neat, right? The materials here are, of course, premium, and the execution is premium. So this is not a knife that I'm expecting to see under $250, right? I think that's more reserved for a lot of the simpler Chinese titanium frame locks that are just kind of flat, and where they just, it's just a series of rectangles and triangles. This has got a little bit more going for it. So it's higher than what I wanted to see it at, but it's still good. And really, truthfully, what it comes down to is this is just a really, really good EDC knife. I like this just as much. The only reason I like the original a little bit more is because I just like a larger knife, right? But this new EDC sized one is great, especially if you were sick of M390 and you wanted Magna Cut or something else, right? Or maybe you just wanted a little more choice, a little more texture choice. This is great because the other one didn't have that as far as I remember, right? So you can get black with satin, you can get black on black, I think. You can get the frag or whatever you want, right? There's a bunch of different options there. So $337, not blowing me away, but also not making me super duper angry. Truthfully, this is a recommendable knife. I think you guys will really enjoy this. For a lot of people, this has enough here that it qualifies as like a one and done EDC knife. Like if you have never purchased a knife in this tier before and you're like, I don't know, I just really want something utilitarian, but it's premium, and you could buy this and be done, right? This is one of those knives that's just going to do everything that you want it to do, and it's going to do it well, and there's nothing here that's going to bother the end user. It's very well thought out, It's not a complete reinvention of the wheel. In fact, far from it, right? But this was designed to be convenient with a little bit of Grambeau's own personality, a little bit of his own zest here, and it does a couple of things a little bit different, and I think that is, we're still staying firmly grounded in general EDC territory, but there's just enough spice here, that's going to tickle the fancies of the enthusiasts who want something like this, right? So, yeah. Obviously, not everybody's going to be beating down doors to pay $337 for a pocket knife, but if you're watching my channel, there's a decent chance that you regularly buy stuff like this. There's enough of you, right? Reading through the comments, I know now. In fact, I think I took a poll on this. It's like half of you, which is insane. Spend money like this regularly on pocket knives. So, yeah, this is recommendable for a lot of people. But, if you're just starting out, you're just climbing the ladder, or maybe you've never spent over $100, climb the ladder for a little bit. There's a lot of stuff out there. If you're in this territory, consider this knife for sure. It's not the worst way to spend $337. This knife will go in my most recommended knives playlist. Thank you again to Mr. Grambeau for allowing me to check this prototype out. This will go back to him. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.